Have you ever felt drawn to someone so deeply that it almost felt like fate? That was me when I met him. Being an INFJ, I've always been a bit of a romantic idealist, believing in the idea of soulmates and once-in-a-lifetime connections. So when he came into my life, it felt like the universe had aligned just for us to meet. At first, he seemed perfect, almost too perfect. He was charming, charismatic, and full of compliments. It was like he knew exactly how to sweep me off my feet. But what I didn't realize then was that I was stepping into the toxic world of a narcissist, and it would take me years to find my way out. This is my story, a journey through love, manipulation, heartbreak, and ultimately, healing. If you're an INFJ, or someone who's ever been ensnared by a narcissist, I hope my experience sheds light on this complex and often devastating dynamic. Let's talk about the attraction between INFJs and narcissists, why it happens, and why it's such a dangerous mix. INFJs by nature are empathetic, intuitive, and deeply driven to help others. We see the potential in people and often feel a calling to help them become the best version of themselves. Narcissists, on the other hand, are master manipulators. They know how to charm and captivate, often presenting themselves as confident, successful, and fascinating individuals. When I met him, he seemed larger than life. He had this magnetic energy that drew everyone in, and he made me feel like I was the most special person in the room. Looking back, I realized that he studied me. He noticed my desire for deep connection and my tendency to put others' needs before my own, and he used that to reel me in. He would say things like, "You're not like anyone I've ever met before," or "I feel like I can be my true self with you." As an INFJ, hearing those words was intoxicating. I crave authenticity and deep connection, and he seemed to offer both. But here's the truth, it wasn't real. Narcissists are experts at mirroring, reflecting back what they think you want to see to create a false sense of compatibility. The first few months were a dream. He was attentive, affectionate, and constantly showered me with praise. Every text, every call, every date felt like something out of a fairy tale. He'd surprise me with thoughtful gifts, write long, heartfelt messages, and tell me how lucky he felt to have found someone like me. But looking back, I realized this wasn't love. It was love bombing. It's a tactic narcissists use to overwhelm you with affection and make you dependent on their approval. One example stands out vividly in my mind. One night, after an incredible dinner date, he told me, "I've never felt this way about anyone before. You're my everything." At the time, those words made my heart swell. But now, I understand they were part of his strategy to hook me emotionally. During this stage, he seemed so perfect that I ignored the small red flags. He'd casually mention how all his exes had let him down, or how people often misunderstood him. I felt sorry for him. I thought, he's been hurt before. I can be the one to show him real love. It wasn't long before the cracks started to show. At first, they were subtle, little criticisms disguised as constructive feedback. "You're so sensitive," he'd say with a laugh, when I expressed how his words hurt me. Or, "You always overthink everything. Can't you just relax?" As an INFJ, I internalized those comments. I started doubting myself, wondering if I was being too emotional or too demanding. I began walking on eggshells, trying to avoid setting him off. Then, the emotional roller coaster began. One day, he'd be the attentive, loving partner I fell for, and the next, he'd be cold, distant, and dismissive. When I tried to address it, he'd flip the script. "Why are you always trying to start a fight? You're so dramatic." I started questioning my own reality. Was I really overreacting? Was I too needy? As an INFJ, I couldn't let go of the idea that I could help him. I told myself that his behavior was a result of his past pain, and that if I just loved him enough, he'd heal. I spent hours analyzing our conversations, replaying arguments in my head, trying to figure out where I went wrong. I convinced myself that if I could just communicate better or be more patient, things would improve. But every time I thought we were making progress, he'd pull away again. It was like chasing a mirage, always just out of reach. Over time, his manipulation became more blatant. Gaslighting was one of his favorite tools. He'd deny things he said, twist my words, and make me question my memory. I never said that. You must have imagined it. You're remembering it wrong. The worst was when he started using triangulation. He'd casually bring up other women, making me feel like I was competing for his attention. You know, my coworker said I'm one of the most interesting people she's ever met. It's nice to feel appreciated. Those comments made me feel inadequate, like I wasn't enough. It kept me striving to earn his approval, even as he continued to withhold it. The breaking point came after a particularly cruel argument. I had expressed that I felt unappreciated and neglected, and his response was to laugh and say, "You're impossible to please. Maybe no one will ever be good enough for you." That night, I sat alone, and finally let the truth sink in. No matter what I did, I would never be enough for him, because he didn't actually care about me. He only cared about what I could do for him. And walking away wasn't easy. He tried every trick to pull me back in. Apologies, love bombing, guilt trips. He even said, "You're making a mistake. You'll never find someone who understands you like I do." But I had finally seen through the illusion. Leaving was just the beginning of my healing journey. I had to rediscover who I was outside of that relationship. Therapy became a lifeline, helping me untangle the emotional knots he had tied around me. I started journaling, reconnecting with old friends, and pursuing the hobbies I had abandoned. Slowly, I rebuilt my confidence and learned to trust my intuition again. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Being an empath doesn't mean you have to sacrifice yourself for others. True love is mutual. It builds you up, not tears you down. INFJs, trust your intuition. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And remember, it's not your job to fix someone who isn't willing to grow. Thank you for listening to my story. If you're an INFJ or anyone who's been caught in the toxic cycle of a narcissistic relationship, know that you're not alone. Healing is possible, and there's a brighter, healthier future waiting for you. Please share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Together, we can support each other and learn how to create relationships that truly nurture our souls.